Now, I'm well aware that Game Week 6 isn't even over yet, but that doesn't stop me making some content for you guys. So here are players to buy and avoid for Game Week 7. Now, my number one transfer target for Game Week 7 is Carlton Morris. Now, I'm not getting carried away with him by any means. I don't think he's going to pull up trees in Game Week 7, but he is putting up decent numbers. And every time I've watched him play, he does look like he's causing Premier League defences problems, mainly because of his size and his physicality and the fact that he takes the penalty. So he could realistically score a penalty against any opposition. He's got a great fixture run as well. Like Game Week 8 against Spurs, he could well do okay in that fixture. Then he plays Forest as well. But particularly if you're wildcarding in Game Week 8 or 9, you could just realistically get him out. So he's in for 1 week, then you wildcard, get him out. The double Game Week in 7 is looking really nice. Everton away, Burnley at home. 2 fixtures he could realistically score in. And just the fact he's now to start for Luton, you don't have to worry about him being benched. Obviously, like I said, if you're wildcarding in 8 and 9, you can take him out straight away. And the numbers that he's been putting up this season are really decent. 0.61 expected returns per 90. You know, it's up there with kind of the normal sort of level strikers in the Premier League, the Watkins kind of level players of the world. He's up there in terms of those stats. So I really do think he's a good option for Game Week 7. The next player I wanted to talk about is Moussa Diaby of Aston Villa. He's basically playing up front for Villa alongside Ollie Watkins. You can see here in the number 19 shirt with the yellow arrow, that's where he's been playing on average in the last 5 games that he's played in the Premier League. And also, Villa go on a fantastic fixture run from Game Week 8. So I think of all the midfielders in his price bracket, with what we know about him already and the fixtures he's got coming up, he's probably the best of all of them. He's returned in 3 of the 5 games that he's started so far in the Premier League, including, of course, a goal against Newcastle at St James's Park. And every time I watch him, he looks so dangerous. And Game Week 7, I know he's got Brighton at home, which on paper people might think will be a tough fixture, but across the season so far, Brighton have not kept a single clean sheet. That might all change because I'm recording this one obviously preemptively, but yeah, they've not kept a clean sheet so far. And even if Brighton concede in Game Week 6, I don't think it takes away from the fact they are a bit leaky defensively. So he could obviously return in Game Week 7. And then with those fixtures coming up in Game Week 8 and beyond, he's a fantastic option. Again, another Luton player that I don't expect to pull up trees, but I don't mind as an option, and that's their goalkeeper, Kaminski. Now, he could feasibly keep a clean sheet against Everton and Burnley. You know, they're 2 of the worst sort of teams in the league, basically. So if Luton were to keep a clean sheet, it would probably be against those 2 teams. He's averaging, of course, over 3 saves per game in the Premier League. So even if he doesn't keep a clean sheet, you'd expect him to return at least some saves bonus points over those 2 fixtures. And to be honest, compared to other goalkeepers in the game at the moment, that's a lot better than they're doing. So I think, again, similar to Morris that I talked about before, if you're wildcarding in Game Week 8 or 9, I think he's worth just putting into your team as a 1-week punt, especially if you're not happy with your current goalkeeper. He's going to start, pretty much guaranteed to start, 3 saves per game. So he starts, gets 3 saves against Everton, maybe a clean sheet and some saves against Burnley. You know, that could be 6 or 7 points, which obviously isn't going to tear up any trees, but it could be better than the goalkeeper that you currently have. And yeah, he's better, basically guaranteed not to blank, in my opinion. He will at least get saves bonus in Game Week 7. And finally, if you wanted to ignore the double game week, I don't think you can ignore the Newcastle defence. Now, we all know they conceded the fewest goals in the Premier League last season. I'm obviously recording this before they play in Game Week 6, but they have kept 2 clean sheets on the bounce as soon as their fixtures kind of turn. Obviously, a clean sheet away at the San Siro and a clean sheet in Game Week 5. So, you know, that's enough for me to suggest that they are able to keep a clean sheet, basically. And with the fixture run that Newcastle have coming up being absolutely fantastic, and I'm going to talk about their forward line in a second, but with the defence being slightly better, in my opinion, than the forward line for FPL picks anyway, it makes sense to target these Newcastle defenders. I just gave them a mention, and of course, with the great fixture run they've got, you could be tempted to go for some of these Newcastle attackers, and I couldn't blame you for being tempted, but realistically, I don't think you can back any of these. Well, 5 players, there's obviously more as well that I haven't mentioned. I don't think you can back any of these 5 or 6 players to play all of the games. You know, Harvey Barnes could be rotated with Gordon on the left wing. Isak can play there as well, as we know. Almiron Willett can play on the right, as of course can Gordon as well. Wilson, Isak could share the centre forward position. There's just too many players for the positions, and I don't think there is a clear first choice in each position. You know, I think across the games as well, for numbers, there are probably better midfield and striker picks than most of these guys. I think the only one you could feasibly say, obviously Wilson and Isak, if they get a clear run in the team, they're obviously good options. Whereas maybe the midfielders could be beaten by other options. The likes of Mbumo, for example, will probably put up better numbers across the season than Harvey Barnes. But when you look at Watkins and Isak, they're not bad, but they don't play every game. And I think for that reason, you have to avoid the Newcastle attack. The same rule, of course, applies to the Brighton attack as well. Now, they have looked really, really good going forward. Obviously, beat Man United at Old Trafford. I know they lost against AEK Athens in the Europa League, but they still put some goals past them. I don't think there's been a game yet this season where they haven't scored. That's how good they are going forward. But it's a similar issue to Newcastle, really. Regardless of the difficulty of fixtures, I think they can score goals. What you can't guarantee in FPL, though, is who's going to play. I'd say Mitoma, probably a bit unfair to include Mitoma in this list. He probably is the one that's going to start most games. However, the rest of them, you really just don't know who's going to play. Ferguson picks up the odd niggle here and there and doesn't play just at random as well. And the manager, of course, won't tell you if this is happening, so Welbeck could play in his place. Pascal Gross is a pretty solid option, but he's just not exciting enough to go for. And the rest of them, well, they're all up for rotation. I just think you have to avoid the Brighton attack. Alright, that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a like rating. I can't say that any of these picks are groundbreaking. I think Game Week 7... I'm not going to suggest picks just for the sake of content. I think these guys are going to return relatively well across the game week. Obviously, Morris and Kaminsky, they've got a double game week. Barring any disasters, they'll probably score 4 points or maybe a little bit more. And the rest of them, I think, are players most are targeting. But in my opinion, most are targeting them because they're the best players in the game. Let me know, of course, in the comments if I'm missing any of them. And subscribe to the Golden Goal channel, which should be just there if you want to see more of my videos. And I'll catch you in the next one.